Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. I'm George Binns, and I'm here with my co-host, Elliot Margolis. And the inspiration for tonight's show started with an article in the Salem News about a month ago. It had an intriguing title. After paying their debt, they needed to pay the bills. And as you can see from the banner, we're talking tonight about offender employment. We have the hero of the story as our guest, Todd Angilly. Welcome to the show, Todd.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
So you deal with probationers.
Yes.
What's a probationer?
A probationer is someone that's been adjudicated by the court, could have already been sentenced, served some type of sentence either in the county jail or in the state prison, the Department of Corrections, or has been ordered directly to probation. That would be, we call probation basically an alternative to sentencing. We're basically giving that individual another chance with supervision being performed by the probation department, and each probationer being supervised by an individual probation officer, like myself.
Yeah. So I guess the problem comes down to one of somebody spends some time in one of the institutions and graduates, and then what? They just dump them on the street, or do they go to a halfway house, or what's the process?
It could be any one of those situations. A person could finish their sentence and the door's open, pat on the back, good luck, and they're sent out to go on with their life. Or they could be transitioned to a sober house, some type of shelter, or a transitional facility. All of those are possibilities. Or they simply just, like I said, go home to the last family member that they were living with, or someone that will take them in. Yeah. Depending on the length of the sentence, they might have served a big sentence, and maybe those family members have kind of,
Well, that brings up, to me, a very important question, which is, okay, somebody commits some kind of a crime, and the family or friends don't want to have anything to do with the person anymore. Do you find that to be a real problem, and how does that affect the individual who committed the crime? And it might have been the first crime he ever committed.
It could be the first time, their first encounter with the criminal justice system. They very well could be admonished by their family. It's just, I think it's natural. Family members sometimes want nothing to do with an individual or a family member, depending on the severity of the crime. Or that individual has got to find a way to reintegrate, and because now they're coming back out. They're coming back out to live amongst us, and we have to find a way to help them reacclimate.
So what does the probation department, guys like you, do to help them make this transition?
Well, first of all,
what's in the system that's available to them?
Well, first of all, we have orders of the court that are handed down. They could range from anything to different types of treatment programs, substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment. There are also specialized programs. There's Changing Lives Through Literature. There's my program, the job program. There's anger management. We try to, when an individual is placed on probation or sentenced to and given conditions of probation, what we call them, we try to make them accommodate the individual's needs. If the individual is on probation after committing a violent offense, anger issues might be an issue, or maybe there's mental health is a big contributor to a lot of crimes that we see today. Those are big issues, the bipolar, different types of things like that. So we want to be able to address those. So the probation officer is charged with basically carrying out the orders of the court, making sure that the probationer adheres to those orders. And then the probation officer can start to assess on his or her own other needs that the probationer might need. And one of those, in my specialty, is employment.
So how do you get somebody into one of these employment programs?
Well, let's take it back a little bit. We have to first see why this came to be, and I was lucky enough to be part of an initiative that was started on a federal level by the Department of Justice, specifically the National Institute of Corrections. The National Institute of Corrections was started right around the time of a very famous prison riot in upstate New York.
Attica.
Attica.
Yeah.
And at the time, I believe it was President Johnson started to, the administration started to address or feel the need for them to take some special to address and kind of look into why these problems were occurring in these facilities, these jails and prisons. So there used to be that a person would be sentenced to prison, they would go to prison, they would sit out their time would be up, door would be open, out they go. Problem is, that individual didn't do anything for the, let's say, 5 years or 10 years or 15 years that they were sentenced to. They didn't do anything other than eat, sleep, and maybe work out or whatever it is. We didn't address their needs. We didn't do anything to help them. Not that it's our responsibility, but these people are returning to our society, so it basically is our responsibility. So what happened was the doors were being opened, and these people were going out. They had no skills, they had no direction, sometimes had no IDs. If it was cold out, they might not have been given a jacket. And I think the intention probably was a lot that, I'm speculating but that maybe they wanted to do good. But when your back's up against the wall and you have nowhere else to turn and you need to eat and you need to get money and you need to survive, you're going to resort back to what you know how to do. Yeah. So therein started what we called the cycle of recidivism. They go in, they come out, they recommit, they go back in, they come out. So in 2010, I attended a federal training in San Antonio, Texas, and was part of a team that traveled from the Commonwealth, went down to Texas and joined other teams from around the country. And we started to address specifically employment. Everything at that point was starting to become statistically driven. We heard the term evidence-based practices. Evidence-based practices at that time was showing us that recidivism was employment was a direct contributor to the reduction of recidivism. If we address their employment needs, we could make an impact on the reduction of recidivism. But the focus was not just on go and get a job, picking up papers, sweeping the floor, whatever it is. We needed to address the individual's skills and interests. Address those two things, and then focus the job search as relates to their skills and interests. And if we did so, we could put these individuals into a job where they were utilizing their already existing skills. We could maybe augment those skills with more training, and they were doing something that they liked and they were interested in doing. And I think we all understand that if we, get up in the morning, and sometimes it's tough to get up, but I think I know I do, I love my job, and I love going to work every day, and that's what we want for them. And if we do this, then they become productive members of society.
Yeah. Well, it brings up two things for me. The first one is, in a previous life, like right after I got out of college, I worked for the Prison Health Project in Boston. And what we did, we were doing a study to see people who were incarcerated because of drug-related problems. Now, the incarceration was because of a breaking and entering or an assault and battery, anything to get money to get drugs. So the purpose of our study was, if we help the person with their drug problem, will that keep them out of jail? And I'm pleased to see now that we have programs for them. We didn't back then. The study that we did suggested that incarceration is not the answer. Programs were the answer, but it took a long time to get that done. And are you finding that a lot of your, say, armed robberies or assaults are drug-related issues?
Absolutely, and that's definitely one of the factors, one of the issues we have to deal with. Substance abuse, mental health issues. These are all big issues that we have to kind of get under control with these. Now, so I'm going to backtrack. These people aren't going to come onto my caseload. I'm not going to meet them the first day and all of a sudden start to work with them on getting a job. It's a process. What we're going to do is we're going to break it all down. We have assessments that we do as probation officers. and we're going to assess their substance abuse needs. Is there a substance abuse issue? Is there mental health issues? And then we're going to centralize them with treatment, and we're going to address those issues, because you're not going to be a good employee, whether you're on probation or not, if you have substance abuse issues and mental health issues and they're not being addressed, because pretty soon that's going to get in the way of your ability to do your job. So we want to do it right. So all those things are also other contributors to recidivism. And if we don't address that, and I think you said it right there, that those issues weren't being addressed. The old way of doing probation, we weren't focusing on those issues. Now, I'm not trying to say that as probation officers, they're going to come into my office the first day I meet them, and they're going to get a big hug from me, and I'm going to tell them it's all going to be okay. They've broken the law. They've committed a crime. They've been adjudicated. They're going to carry out their sentence, so to speak. But either we make it productive, or we just further the problem. And that's what all of this does. So yes, like I said, again, the substance abuse issue, the mental health issues, all of those things, once we can secure them, then we can fine-tune the supervision to include employment. And a lot of these people are resourceful. They've worked while they've been inside. They have skills. We just kind of want to, hone them in for good.
Okay, now the second part, sorry, George, but the second part of this is, I have a friend who got into financial trouble. And when he got into financial trouble, he did nothing. It was no armed robbery, no type of crime like that, but he created a little Ponzi scheme.
Sure.
Took some money and finally got caught, got sentenced to 4 years at Walpole. After a couple of years, he got on probation and work-study. So, and now he's doing great. And he's still a friend of mine, because, you do need that support.
Sure.
But the question is, how do you find employers to hire somebody like that? Whether it's a crime against the person or whether it's a white-collar crime, how do you find employers to do this? What benefits do the employers get?
So at that same time, the federal government stepped up, took the initiative that we were going to start to do the Department of Justice. This was the way we were going to try to focus with helping these individuals. At the same time, we knew we had to go at it from an employer stance. So the government started to offer incentives to employers to hire these types of individuals. Okay, I say these types of individuals with records. So we deal with the acronym WOTC, WOTC, that's the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. An employer can hire one of our individuals, and if that individual retains their employment for 6 months, they can now file for a tax credit up to $2,400. One of my colleagues within the federal system had it was a truck wash in South Carolina. There are a lot of trucks down there. And he employed enough of these individuals that 1 year he paid no taxes, because he got enough tax credits. It's a one-time offer, but what it is it's an opportunity for the employer. It's kind of like just multi-leveled. It gets them into the game, the employer. It gets them interested, okay? It introduces them to someone from that background. It might even, most of the time, 90% of the time, cure some of those. I'm trying to think of the word that every felon is Charles Manson, so to speak.
Yeah.
It kind of.
Gives them a sense of reality.
Right.
It's a real person.
This is a person who made a mistake.
Yeah.
And what happens is this person starts to be a viable employee.
Yeah.
Okay? And what I always found was, because you have to do some work on your own. You have to, as the probation officer, as the person who's going to go out there to get the employers interested. So what I usually do with an employer, when I'm trying to get the buy-in with, is I say, well, just hire one. Take one, see how it works out. And 9 times out of 10, I'm getting a call within a couple weeks. Hey, so-and-so is working out really good. Do you have any more? I need like 2 more guys.
Yeah.
I have a big employer in Boston that I'm just not going to say the name just because.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But a very big employer. And when I initially sat down with them, what got them on board was I told them I could guarantee 3 things. First of all, they would be assessed at low risk to reoffend. They were towards the end of their probation. They were ready to terminate, getting close to the end, and they were ready to go out and get work. They, for this particular operation, they weren't going to be sex offenders. It just, we can still find sex offenders jobs, but this one, it had to be. And then third, they were going to be drug-free. They were going to be clean. And I assured them of that. And they had my personal contact, and we've had a very, very low, we'll call recidivism rate with that employer. Mm-hmm. And any time that there's been an issue, and very, very minute issues such as maybe the individual has been late, or they're not really following directions, just little things like that. They come to me and they say, listen, can you straighten so-and-so out?
Yeah.
We're having some issues. I take care of it. The employer now has somebody who's on board with them. While they're supervising hundreds of people, they know that they can come to me and I'm going to take care of it. My people show up, they want to work. There's incentive for them to work. There's incentive for the employer to hire these people. I can also federally bond an individual. It's a sort of an insurance policy. The bonds come in $5,000 increments, and we can actually put two together to be $10,000. And what that is that sort of an insurance policy that if this employer hires this individual and there's any type of theft, damage, or what have you, they can file a claim and it will be taken care of. Those two different incentives. What's great about the bonding is, I like to always say, and I haven't had an employee yet that has needed to file a claim. So when you start to get them on board, you just need that one little person to get through, and it kind of becomes like I can't think of a better way to say it, but kind of like a disease. They get that first one through, and then they go, oh, yeah, this is working out really great. Yeah, send me some more. Send some, because my people normally have a little better retention than the average, kid or, college kid or something like that. There's more, at risk, at play for them.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that you get into drug treatment, mental health issues. Mm-hmm. Is there professional help available for these, or is it like AAA, AA, where they just talk amongst themselves? What level of treatment or help do they get?
And that's where each probationer is. You can't broad brush probation. As I carry a caseload anywhere between 80 to 95 clients. That means I have 90 different individuals that I need to specifically, individually supervise. I have, and that's the key word here as well, whether it's with employment or any other aspect of probation, is collaboration, working with other agencies. Back in the day, I've only been a probation officer for about 11 years. Back in the day, the probation officer took on the role of everything. Mm-hmm. And everything came through the probation officer. When the person reported, they showed a check stub, they showed whatever they were doing, verifications, and they were out the door. Now, with such an enormous amount of treatment that's involved, a lot of the times, very rarely do I have somebody on probation who's not in need of other services. Mm-hmm. So having that ability, so we have other agencies very close by, even just right in Essex County, where I can make referrals for substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment. Some people require what we call dual diagnosis. They need that heavy intensive, almost daily treatment where they report to a facility daily for 3 to 4 hours at a time. Probation also has a facility where we do that type of work as well. They report 3 to 5 times a week. It's intensive. And then we have the IOPs, the intensive outpatient treatment centers. There's one at Leahy here in Beverly. There's several that I work with in Lynn. So if I'm going to send somebody for substance abuse treatment, I want them to go to a substance abuse specialist. And that's where we make the recommendation or the referral or to mental health or whatever that is.
As you were talking about your clients coming out of prison, I keep thinking of that scene towards the end of the Shawshank Redemption, where Red gets out and he gets a job in a supermarket. Mm-hmm. And he has to ask permission for everything because he's been so used to the prison regiment that society doesn't work that rigid, and he doesn't know how to handle it. So I can imagine there's a lot of social interaction that they have to pick up on especially for someone who's been in for a significant period of time and retrained to the prison environment. So where does that happen, or how does that happen?
You know, and you're absolutely right, and that's kind of like the part of probation that isn't taught at training or isn't in the job description. Case in point, I had an individual. Now, I started in probation. I started in the district court. That's less serious offenses. The maximum sentence a person in district court can receive is 2.5 years in the house, and that very rarely happens. If once a person, it's the felonies and the more serious crimes that are supervised out of the Superior Court. So I've only been in the Superior Court for a little over 5 years, and it's still new to me. It's still things that I have to kind of remind myself about. I had a female who did a 12-year sentence for manslaughter, and there was that whole social interaction. She was very introverted. She was very not ready to kind of, I'm more of an in-your-face type person, and she wasn't really ready to hit the ground running. And you could tell, you could sense that apprehension. And what was interesting with her is we were able to go through all the assessments and get her stabilized and get her ready to go out. And the next step was employment. And she got her a job with a department store. And her issue was, as she started to do well at this store, they actually gave her a promotion, and part of that promotion was she was to supervise a small group of people and had to utilize a handheld computer device. Well, of course, she comes running into my office all frazzled because she doesn't know how to use a computer. Mm-hmm. So now I have to help her out with, referring her or sending her over to getting her some help with the computer. And I was able to do that through one of the local career centers and have her take just a simple Microsoft Word or whatever it was. And it just helped her because she didn't even know how to use a phone. I think we're kind of just, we use our iPhones or whatever it is, without even thinking. A lot of these people they just don't have that. So getting them, using emails and things like that, they're not. Some of them do receive, or you are able to use those types of tools or whatever they are in the prison system, but a lot aren't. So that all becomes part of it, and it kind of that unspoken.
If you think back 12 years to what we were doing, and that's when they last saw society, there's a heck of a change
Absolutely.
between then and now.
Yep.
So I can imagine they would have a bit of a transitional problem as what's going on here.
Right. And that's one of the things is you have to really be careful that you're not overwhelming these individuals. They have sometimes their conditions of probation can be numerous. And rather than hit them all with all of them and say, you got to do this, this, you've got to really be able to kind of detect what they're ready for. Mm-hmm. And maybe they do one at a time, or they maybe two, and then touch on one of the others and just kind of keep it all right there, because you start to overwhelm them, you're gonna lose them.
I think you made the point earlier on that you got 80 some odd clients. They're all different.
Absolutely.
And they've all got a different background and a different set of problems to work through. Yeah.
Right.
Do you find that people go back to their home, or does their family accept them, or do they have to find a place on their own and start a new life?
What's interesting is what I find the majority of them do is there might not be that instant family support or parental support. Some of my clients are older individuals, so they're maybe not going home to mom and dad, but or mom and dad might not be in the picture. But a lot of my young kids, and at least to me, as they start to get back into compliance and show that they're doing the right thing, it seems as though their family starts to come back into the picture once they've kind of proven through what they're doing. And one of those biggest things is when they're doing my job program, and that the family members see that they're attending a weekly class and that they've committed to this and they're doing work, and they sometimes, but it still happens where that was one of the things that became kind of interesting to me, was I would have people just stop by, and I'd say, well, what are you doing here? I'm not supposed to see you till next week. Yeah, well, I was just coming by, I wanted to see what was going on, and you started to figure out that you are all
You
they
are
got.
family to
Yeah,
them.
you know,
You're
I
in
get-
contact with the real world.
Yeah.
Do you talk to the family and do you tell them, you know, gee, this person needs some help and he needs the help from you to help him get back into a real life, or is that not part of what your job is?
You know, when we're out in the community and we're performing the home visits, and because that's another part of probation as well, as going out and not only having them come into the office and do these assessments and abide by their condition of probation, but I've got to start to know who my people are, so that way I want to know where they're hanging out when they've got free time, or who they're with, where they go. And because environment is a big player in this as well, so I obviously find myself in their homes a lot, and so yeah, interaction with the family members is key in making, and the family members are the ones that will help me a lot. If there's an issue and I'm not getting it, there's a problem or whatever, and I'm not picking up on it, or he or she is keeping it from me very well, as they're able to do very well. A lot of these family members they're gonna dime them out. They're gonna give me a call and they're gonna say, sometimes it's anonymous, but because this affects them. It's unfortunately, their mistakes and their problems become the family's problems. So and I'm that type of probation officer anyways, and I want to be involved. I want to know who their family members are. I want to know who they're around, and it just gives me a better sense of who I'm dealing with and who's involved with their life.
Hey, George, you got time for one more question.
Well, one of the things that I remember from the days of Mao Zedong and the Chinese government, that whenever, this is a funny one, that whenever one of these officials from China would come to the United States in their Mao uniform, they would go to the Chinese embassy and they would have a set of Western suits for them to try on so they could blend in with the natives. One of the issues comes up that most of these people that come out of prison don't have a wardrobe, or even the fundamental idea of how do you show up for an interview? What kind of an interview are you taking? And do you have any sort of facilities that you can dress them up for the right occasion?
Absolutely, and I feel like I haven't really spoken too much about the job aspect or what we do with the job program, but that's what we do when the person is now moved into. It's time for them to start to address their employment issues, and we address their skills and interests, and we focus that search. And part of that, and I'm going to answer your question, but part of the skills and interests and addressing that is, I could very well have an individual who says, I want to drive a truck, or I want to drive a limo, or something like that. And we look at their record, and I say, well, you got 3 OUIs, so it's not going to work. So that becomes the reality factor of it.
Yeah.
So then we can tweak that job search. So we've got a focused job search, what we're going for. Then we help them with identifying the labor market. The person wants to be, we had one where he wanted to work in graphic design. He wanted to do something like that. We were able to research the labor market, and in this area, at that time when we did it, that job carried a salary of about $32,000 a year. Quickly, that individual, that didn't work for him. So we were able to now retweak that job search for him. Now,
You got to make it quick. 30
sure.
seconds.
So as far as, yes, we have, that's also a part of it. We help them with a couple of different, there's Dress for Success, there's a couple of different, some of the Salvation Army and stuff will help us with helping them acquire proper attire for job interviews and such.
I'll tell you, a half hour goes by very quickly,
It
as you
really
can
does.
see.
Yeah.
And, I got to thank you, and I'm sure George does too, and everybody, for the work you do, because you help us live a good, normal life by helping them get back into society. So thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you for doing what you do. And we may have you back again. This was fascinating work.
For me as well, thank you.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.